And he just knew instinctively that these were the people that had gone through the same experience that he had gone through right then on the spot. This wasn't a one-off, that, this is something that they had been doing for a while, right? And so he put that down, and then that was the kind of the end of it, right? They blanked them out, put them back down on the docks. Both the guys woke up, man, and the UFO was gone.
Yeah.
They looked at each other. They were terrified, and they actually took action on this. They immediately run, and this is one of the reasons why I believe them here too, man. They went and ran. They called the sheriff's department, and either called the local Air Force base right there on the spot, or called the Air Force base when they got to the sheriff's department, and the Air Force blew them off, which is fine. Again, October 1973. There was probably no Project Blue Book going on or whatever. So the cops show up, and again, they tell the story. The cops could tell that both of these guys, Jay, were visibly upset, right? To say the least. But they had been drinking. And so that's where it came in. I don't know how many of those natty bows they knocked back, or whatever the drink of choice was back then that day. I don't know how many they knocked them back.
Shoot, I don't even know. Down there would have been probably past Blue Ribbon.
PBRs? Probably been the PBRs, man. So they probably knocked back how many PBRs got knocked back? Anyway, but the sheriff's, this is small. This, like back in the day too, man, your sheriff knew everybody, right? This wasn't like he had, city cops, county cops, or whatever. The sheriff pretty much knew everybody.
Well, this is the Bayou, bro.
This is the Bayou, man.
This is Moss Point in Pascagoula.
Yeah.
That's a coastal preserve, right? Dude, it's inland a little bit, but it seems like it's pretty marshy.
Yeah. So they took them back. They heard the stories, right? And so in a typical never been caught up by the police is you don't ever talk when the cops aren't around. They tried to trick them up. So they left them in a room, turned on a recording.
That was a good trick, dude.
It's a good trick, man. But that's like I learned that you learn that if depending on
but this was 1973, bro.
Yeah, you learned that in the 5th grade where I grew up, man.
Exactly. So, I get it, but
so
anyways, guys, see, that's the thing. They weren't trying to hide nothing.
They weren't, and so
it wasn't. Let's get our story straight. It was what the hell just happened.
Absolutely, man, for sure. So they left them in that room. Recording went out, and these guys started talking about it amongst themselves, how bad it was. I'm actually going to put that recording in right here. And now we're back. And so that made the sheriff and those other guys going like, what in the world are we listening to right here? And one of the funniest things that Charles Hickson said on that recording, by the way, when you hear that recording, that is deep South, right? So look, I highly recommend you turn on, yeah, man.
Does it need subtitles?
I highly recommend you turn on the subtitles for that portion right there, man. That is deep. That is deep South. Real quick, man, sidebar. One time, I was back from the Navy. I was home for
can't blame me for this one.
I was home for a few weeks. Now I grew up in the South, Upper East Tennessee, and I was in a liquor store called the One Stop.
In the Tri-Cities.
Yeah, man. I grew up and I was in a liquor store, and these two old boys were talking to each other, and imagine Hank Hill with a mouthful of mashed potatoes, and that's what they sounded like. And I could not make out what these two guys were saying, right? And they're up there where the Pharaoh people live, right? And they had their own dialect. And I used to tell people that all the time, man. In the South, when you hear about these Pharaoh people, we're actually gonna do a podcast on Pharaoh people. Their language regresses. What's that?
You want to go visit some?
No.
Go visit some family of mine.
Yeah, maybe, man, maybe. So their language regresses, right? And so when you hear these two guys talking, man, you're gonna have to play that back a little bit, maybe, because that's the I had to listen in, right? That's like deep South right
Yeah,
there.
you got to listen real close to that
So
because
yeah,
that South Bayou Creole
oh yeah,
something,
yeah,
it just twists it a little too much, and
yeah. That's
I
a
can't
hard
even get
dialect
that
right
either.
there.
Yeah,
So Charles told Calvin, man, I thought it made me laugh when I heard this. He said that all the S I've been through in my life, and now I got to go through something like this. That's what he said, right? I don't know why. I
yeah,
don't know why that made me laugh, man. But that right there, that is
because
a
that's a from the heart
that
kind
is
of
a from
thing.
the
You know what I
heart
mean?
thing. Like, can you believe after all we've had to go through,
After all the bullshit I've been through, I gotta go
I got to
through this
put
too.
this on my resume too, right?
Mm,
So, anyways, the case blew up, hit the papers, and back then, the Men in Black, Smithsonian, Satanic, shut everything down, Freemason network wasn't as quick responding as it was. So this thing got legs, man. It got a lot of legs, right? And stories made media attention, became one of the most significant U.S. UFO stories of our time. I actually believe that. I mean, Betty and Barney Hill is a good story to compare this to, but so was the Kelly Cahill story out of Melbourne, Australia, and so was the other guy. I think his name is Fire in the Sky. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head right now. But the
yeah,
Charles and Calvin, man, it's a good story, but it gets weirder.
yeah,
It gets weirder. So on over the years, man, both of these guys stuck to their story. Charles never shied away from it. Calvin developed a pretty bad case of PTSD about it. Calvin is more open to talking about it now, which is fair,
yeah,
right? I mean, this was,
yeah. I mean, he's had some time to process.
yeah, I mean, like that's, some people are built different, man.
Subscribe now and turn on the notifications to join us on this extraordinary journey into the unknown.